One truth, a call to the gurus, 12 voices, one silence, the truth the world forgot, by David Russo. Chapter 1, The Call Without Words. The first heard it in the silence between waves. On a rugged coast in northern Japan, a young Zen monk knelt beneath a pine tree, eyes half closed, watching the ocean breathe. The wind teased his robes, but his breath remained still. Then, without sound, without language, something shifted. Not a voice, not a vision, just a pull, a certainty without explanation. He opened his eyes. There was nothing to see, but he knew it was time to leave. Thousands of miles away, in the red heat of the Sahara, a fire crackled beneath the stars. An old Bedouin alchemist cupped sand in his palms, letting it fall slowly, whispering verses in a language older than memory. Then he stopped. He felt something behind him, but there was no one, only firelight and the open dark. He muttered. You've come. He didn't ask who. He simply rose, put out the fire with a handful of sand, and began walking east. In the Amazon basin, a woman sat among vines thick with the scent of rain. Her eyes were glazed with visions. Leaves rustled as if in recognition. A capuchin monkey perched above her stared into the canopy with sudden stillness. She stood abruptly, barefoot, unafraid. Mother, she whispered to the jungle, you call me. From her hut, she gathered only a carved bowl, a woven bag of herbs, and a clay flute. Then she turned toward the river without looking back. A theoretical physicist sat in his London apartment, staring at a chalkboard filled with equations. He hadn't spoken in 3 days. Somewhere in the tangled symbols of space, time, and quantum collapse, he had felt it. At first, he dismissed it as intuition, a familiar flicker of insight before discovery. But this was different. Not thought, presence. He stood up suddenly, leaving the chalkboard unfinished. He didn't pack anything. He just opened the door and walked into the morning fog. Meanwhile, in Dakar, an aging griot played a kora beneath a baobab tree. His fingers moved with memory, but his heart was elsewhere. Your rhythm has changed, said a boy watching nearby. The griot nodded, plucking a final chord. The ancestors are restless, he said. They want me to travel. Where? I'll know when I arrive. He slung the kora over his shoulder, kissed the ground, and walked toward the edge of the city. High in the Himalayas, a young woman tending a temple fire paused as the smoke curled upward, forming a spiral. She frowned, not at the shape, but at the feeling, as if the smoke had recognized her. She closed her eyes, a whisper, not in her ears, but in her bones. She breathed in once, exhaled twice, then said quietly, so it's time. In a dusty village in Iran, a Sufi dervish danced beneath a crescent moon. His feet traced circles in the sand, his heart spinning with the sky. Then suddenly he stopped, mid-spin, breathless, eyes wide. Ah, he said to no one, laughing softly, you found me. He looked toward the distant mountains and began to hum a melody older than words. They came from everywhere. A Polynesian priestess who had been watching tides for decades, a man with no name who lived in mirrors, a child monk who had never spoken a single word, and a woman whose skin held the scent of salt and prophecy. All received the same call, though not one could explain it. There were no instructions, no signs in the sky, no voice in the clouds. And yet they knew. They left behind their students, their lovers, their studies, their names. They walked away from cities, boats, schools, gardens, altars, and temples. Each of them felt it like gravity, not downward, but inward, toward something or someone, something ancient, something they had always known but forgotten. The call had no words, and still it said everything. Chapter 2. The Place Between Worlds. The sanctuary could not be found on any map, not because it was hidden, but because it belonged to a place before place. It revealed itself only when one stopped searching, and so, one by one, they arrived. The first to reach it was the young Zen monk. He emerged from a forest into a clearing so still it seemed the air itself was holding its breath. The trees bowed slightly inward as if aware. At the center, a stone circle, ancient and overgrown, yet untouched by decay. He didn't speak, he simply stepped inside. Hours later, the Badone fire speaker arrived. He said, running a finger along one of the stones. You are old, older than the names. He looked up and saw the monk, already seated cross-legged on the ground, eyes closed. Are we early, little brother? The Badone asked, sitting down beside him. The monk did not reply, but he smiled. Soon the others came. The forest seer, her feet still dusted with jungle soil, paused at the edge of the clearing and looked around. The earth remembers this place, she said softly. So do I. The physicist came in a cab that stopped a mile too early and refused to go further. Strange place, the driver muttered. Yes, the physicist replied, stepping out. Very. We walked the last mile in silence. When we reached the clearing, he laughed under his breath. Energy convergence, naturally, he muttered, adjusting his glasses. But who designed the geometry? He circled the site like a curious child, tracing invisible lines in the air. By twilight, the circle was nearly full. They did not speak much. A nod here, a glance, a quiet recognition. No one asked, "Why are you here?" No one introduced themselves. They simply knew. The ocean priestess was the one to break the silence. There are no wrong tides, she said, brushing sand from her robe as she sat. Only those who resist their pull. The griot chuckled. I suppose that makes us the ones who listened, or the ones who remembered, she replied. The final to arrive was the child monk, no older than 12, with eyes like deep water. He walked into the clearing with bare feet and folded hands. He did not look around. He went straight to the 12th seat and sat. No one questioned it. When all 11 were present, the wind shifted. The air grew thick, though no storm approached. From the far side of the circle, the trees parted, not by wind, but by something deeper. She walked in slowly, an ageless woman, cloaked in deep gray. No shoes, no symbols, no name. But her presence rang like a bell through the clearing. She walked to the center of the circle and stood for a long time, not looking at anyone, not speaking. Then finally, she raised her head. Her voice was soft, yet every ear heard her clearly. You were not summoned by force, she said. You were remembered. No one spoke. She looked at each of them, one by one. I am not your teacher, she continued. I am not your host. I am simply the keeper of silence. She gestured to the stones. This place remembers you because you have each, in your own way, carried a piece of truth, a fragment. She turned to the child monk. It is time now to speak them aloud. She walked the circle slowly. One by one, each of you will offer your truth, not the teachings you inherited, not the doctrines you defend, but the essence, the truth beneath your names. You may speak, or sing, or sit in silence. You may offer a story, a breath, a question. She reached the final stone, the empty seat. And there she paused. When the last has spoken, the circle will be complete. She looked to the sky. The first stars were visible now. And if the truth is whole, you will know. No applause, no ceremony. She stepped back, seating herself just outside the circle, hands in her lap. No one asked when they would begin. They knew. The Sufi mystic, the windwalker, stood slowly, humming a melody that seemed older than speech. He would begin. Chapter 3. The Keeper of the Circle. The fire was small, just enough to offer light, not warmth. 12 stone seats circled it, carved long ago by hands no one could name. Moss had crept into the grooves, but the structure held. The stones hummed faintly, like a memory not quite spoken. And seated just outside that circle, still as the moon, was the woman. She had no name, not that she shared, no title, no emblem, only presence. She had arrived without announcement and said almost nothing since. The 11 figures now gathered were not used to silence. Some had taught in temples, others in universities, some in caves, some on stages. But none had sat in a place where no one led, and yet nothing was lost. The physicist was the first to break the stillness. Are you the one who called us? The woman looked at him, then at the fire. No, she said softly. You were called by your own readiness. The griot tapped his drum lightly. Then, who are you, grandmother? I am the one who does not speak. But you are speaking now. She smiled faintly. Only because you are not yet quiet enough to hear me otherwise. There was no rebuke in her voice, no pride either, just a tone that made one want to listen more closely. The Sufi mystic chuckled and leaned back. Ah, a mirror. The keeper rose to her feet slowly. Her robes barely moved, as if she walked through air denser than the rest of them knew. You each carry a seed, she said, a truth the world forgot. You were not chosen, you answered. Why us? Asked the ocean priestess. The keeper turned toward her. Because you each have stopped pretending to know. The child monk looked up from his folded hands. He had not spoken a word. His mouth had never formed language. But in that moment, he blinked slowly, as if understanding. The physicist crossed his arms. And what happens when we've each spoken? Is there a goal? A convergence? No, there is no goal. Only the remembering. Of what? Of what cannot be spoken. A hush followed. Even the wind around them paused, as if listening. The fire speaker cracked his knuckles thoughtfully. So each of us must offer something. Yes, but not what you think is true, the keeper replied. You must give what lives beneath your teachings, the fire beneath your voice, the knowing beneath the words. And if someone refuses, asked the forest seer, then they will remain incomplete. The woman gestured to the circle. This space does not require obedience, but it does require honesty. She knelt near the fire and ran her hand over the ground, sweeping away dust that wasn't there. You are not here to agree, she said. You are not here to teach. You are not here to debate. She looked up at each of them in turn. You are here to speak the truth that would remain if everything else was taken from you. The griot leaned forward. And then what? What happens when we're done? You will return. Changed? No. Remembering what never changed. The keeper stood again, her figure casting no shadow in the firelight. She walked to the 12th stone, the empty seat, and placed a hand on it gently. This one remains unspoken. She looked toward the child monk, the Sufi, the scientist, the priestess, all 11. 11 voices, one silence. And when the silence speaks, she whispered, you will know. She stepped back outside the circle once more and folded into stillness. The fire cracked softly. The wind returned, and the windwalker, humming a melody without words, stood. Then let it begin, he said. He removed his sandals and stepped to the center of the circle. His eyes shimmered with tears not yet fallen. There is no map to the beloved, he said. Only longing, only surrender. Chapter 4. The Windwalker, the Nomadic Mystic. The man who rose from the stone seat was lean, weather-worn, and barefoot. His robe was simple, sun-bleached cotton, stitched at the hem with small crescent moons. Around his neck hung no symbol, only a threadbare scarf the color of desert sand. He carried a worn satchel on one shoulder. From it, he pulled out a reed flute no longer than his forearm. The group watched in silence as he stepped to the center of the circle, where the fire crackled gently. He bowed, not to the others, but to the center of the flame. Then he turned slowly, letting his gaze fall on each one, on the child monk, the physicist, the griot, the seer. He nodded at the keeper of silence. She returned the gesture with a barely perceptible smile. He lifted the flute to his lips and played. The melody that came was not mournful, but full of ache, not sorrow, longing. It wound through the air like wind through canyon stones, thin, trembling, ancient. Each note seemed to search for the one that would follow it. When the song ended, he did not speak immediately. He placed the flute down gently, as if it had become tired. Then he looked up. In the desert where I was born, he said, his voice soft and sun-drenched, we have a word that means to walk without direction, but with purpose. He glanced at the fire. That word is also used for love. When I was young, he continued, I searched for maps, for certainty, for signs in the sky or voices in the sand. I wanted to know where to go, what to do, who to become. But the more I searched, the less I heard. He crouched beside the fire and picked up a handful of dust, letting it sift through his fingers. So one day I stopped. I sat still. I let the silence come. And in that silence, I heard a voice, not with my ears, but from behind my ribs. You are not the seeker, it said. You are the sought. He let the words hang. The physicist leaned forward slightly. What does that mean? He asked. You are the sought? The windwalker smiled. It means we run in circles trying to find the divine, when all along the divine is chasing us. He stood again and began to walk the inner circle, barefoot, slowly. I met a woman once in Morocco, he said, who had lost her sight. She said to me, people think vision is in the eyes, but I see with my feet. The earth tells me where to go. I asked her how she knows if she is walking the right path. She laughed and said, there is no right path. There is only the one you walk with love. The forest seer nodded, a hand resting over her heart. The plants say the same, she whispered. Love, the windwalker said, is the pathless path. It cannot be followed. It cannot be taught. It can only be surrendered to. He stopped in front of the child monk, who looked up at him calmly. Love does not ask you to become someone else. It asks you to vanish, to disappear into what you already are. The griot spoke, tapping his drum softly. So is love the truth? The windwalker knelt beside him and shook his head. Love is not the truth. Love is the way to remember it. He looked around the circle now, at all the faces lit by fire. You want to find God? Let yourself long. Let yourself want nothing but that. He tapped his chest once, softly. There is no map to the beloved, he said. Only longing, only surrender. He returned to his seat and picked up the flute again. But this time, he did not play. He held it close to his heart like a prayer left unspoken. A long silence followed, not empty, but full. Not awkward, but sacred. Even the fire seemed to burn quieter, as if honoring the moment. Then at last the keeper of silence spoke. The first voice has been given. The circle begins. And across the gathering something had shifted. They were no longer strangers. They were now witnesses. Chapter 5. The Forest Seer, the Voice of the Earth. The Windwalker had taken his seat again, eyes closed, flute resting in his lap. The circle sat in hushed stillness, as if the desert wind had given way to something denser. He had opened the gate. The path now waited for another to step forward. It was the forest seer who rose. Her long black hair was streaked with silver, tied with vines and feathers. Her hands were stained with the green of leaves, the red of berries. Around her neck hung a jaguar tooth, and in her eyes flickered something older than language. She carried no instrument, no book, only a small clay bowl painted with swirling lines, each one a river, a root, a memory. She walked to the fire and knelt beside it, touching the earth with her palm. I speak not alone, she said, voice low and steady. I carry the breath of the rainforest, the memory of the trees, and the dreams of the plants. The physicist tilted his head. Plants? Dream? He asked. She turned to him not dismissively, but gently. Everything that lives dreams. She placed the bowl in the center of the circle, and the earth is dreaming us even now. There was a time, she began, when we listened, when the river taught us rhythm, when the birds warned of changes, when the fungi whispered through the soil. We call them spirits, but they are more than that. They are memory. They are counsel. They are us. She looked around the circle. Then we forgot. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a folded piece of bark cloth. Unrolling it, she revealed an intricate painting made with dyes, red, ochre, green, and black. This is the vision I was given, not in sleep, in ceremony. She laid it flat for all to see. The painting showed a great tree with 12 branches. Each branch bore a symbol, a flame, a wave, a mirror, a drum. But the roots of the tree bled into something darker. Gray machines, pipelines, black smoke, metal teeth. The tree is truth, she said. Each of us is a branch, but the roots are dying because we have severed them from the earth. The ocean priestess placed a hand over her chest. Yes, she whispered, the tide no longer sings like it once did. The forest seer nodded. The earth is not angry. The earth is not vengeful. She is grieving. She looked to the child monk, then to Bedouin. She weeps through drought. She shakes through quakes. She burns, not to punish, but to call us back. She lifted her eyes again to the fire. We are not stewards of nature. We are not separate from it. We are the earth dreaming of herself in human skin. The griot leaned forward. And what is your truth, then, sister of trees? She closed her eyes. For a long moment, she said nothing. When she opened them again, tears had gathered, but she did not let them fall. My truth, she said, is that we cannot heal ourselves without healing the earth. She picked up the bowl and held it with both hands. To harm the earth is to silence your own spirit. She passed the bowl around the circle. One by one, each person held it, reverently, as if it contained breath itself. When it returned to her, she whispered, You are the rainforest dreaming. She stood and returned to her seat. No applause, no nods of agreement, only silence, deep and alive. The keeper of silence bowed her head slightly. The second voice has spoken, she said. The wind moved again, but this time it carried the scent of soil, leaves, and rain. And somewhere beyond the clearing, a single bird began to sing. Chapter 6. The Child of Stillness, the Zen Orphan. The bowl had returned to the forest seer's lap. The fire popped quietly, casting golden light across the circle. Most had their eyes closed now, not in sleep but in reflection. A shift had taken place from the longing of the windwalker to the grieving earth, and now something even more subtle began to rise. The child monk opened his eyes. He was the youngest among them, no more than 12, but in his gaze was the weight of ancient skies, the calm of undisturbed water. He had never spoken a word in his life, not to the monks who raised him, not to the world outside, not even to himself. His silence was not from fear, but from presence. He stood now, carefully, as if not to disturb the space he inhabited. The others turned slowly toward him. They did not expect speech. They simply waited. He walked to the fire and sat, not cross-legged, but kneeling. He did nothing, said nothing, breathed, and in the stillness of that breath, something opened. At first, the physicist shifted uncomfortably. Is this his offering? He whispered to the fire speaker. Shh, came the reply. You're missing it. The child monk lifted a small pebble from the ground. He held it in his palm, then slowly raised it toward the firelight. He let it fall. It landed with the faintest tap, and then he whispered just one word. Before. It was the first word he had ever spoken. The ocean priestess leaned forward. Before what, little one? He looked at her, not with judgment, but clarity. Just before. He pointed at the fire, then at the wind, then at his own chest. Before this, before name, before thought, before fear. Then he told his story. When I was left at the monastery, I was a baby. No name, no record, just a blanket and a scroll that read, "Let him hear the silence." The monks taught me nothing. They only sat with me. And one day, as a boy, I asked them, in my mind, not out loud, "Who am I?" I waited for an answer. None came. But in the space that followed, I felt peace. He looked up now, and his voice was steady. I realized I had been asking with noise, and truth does not answer noise. So I stopped asking, I stopped naming, I stopped trying. He placed a hand gently on the earth, and that's when I first heard the truth, not in words, but in this. He closed his eyes. A full minute passed. No one moved, no one dared. And in that minute, something descended over the circle. A stillness so complete, it wasn't absence, it was presence. Like the moment just before a wave breaks, like the instant before breath becomes voice. Then he opened his eyes. Before thought, he said slowly, there is peace. Before name, there is truth. He bowed to the fire, then to the keeper of silence, and then returned to his stone. His silence did not return as absence, but as completion. The griot wiped a tear. That child just said more in 30 words, he whispered, than I have in 30 years. The keeper of silence stood briefly and nodded. The third voice has spoken, she said, the voice before sound. And the fire, now low, flickered not in exhaustion, but in reverence. The circle held its breath, for once, not to speak, but simply to be. Chapter 7. The Fire Speaker, the Desert Alchemist. The circle's silence was profound after the child monk's quiet offering. The fire crackled softly, sending sparks up like fleeting thoughts into the vast night. Then the fire speaker rose. He was an elder man with skin weathered like sun-baked clay. His eyes held the heat of 1,000 suns and the patience of shifting dunes. A thick scarf wrapped around his neck bore the faded colors of the desert reds, ochres, and burnt sienna. He carried no staff, no symbol, only a small pouch of fire starting flints. As he stepped into the circle, his gaze swept over the others, steady and knowing. Pain, he said softly, is a tool, a hammer. He knelt by the fire and sparked a flint, but not to break you, he continued, to awaken you. The physicist frowned, intrigued. Awakened from what? The fire speaker struck the flint again, sending a tiny shower of sparks into the dry kindling. From sleep, from illusion, from the comfort of pretending everything is fine. He let a spark catch, and flames began to lick the wood. In the desert, we learn quickly suffering is not the enemy. He looked toward the child monk. You, young one, know the silence before pain. I know the fire after. The fire speaker's voice grew stronger, woven with a rhythm like the desert wind. The desert strips away your masks, your illusions, your excuses. When the sun burns, you either wither or you become something new. He turned toward the griot. Stories are told of hardship, but few speak of what comes after, transformation. He picked up a piece of charred wood and held it aloft. This is not the fire's destruction, it is its alchemy. From ash, the soil is nourished. From suffering, the soul is forged. The forest seer leaned forward. So pain is necessary? The fire speaker smiled, a slow, knowing smile. Pain is a hammer. Strike it wisely. He looked at each of them, one by one. We fear pain because it is fire, because it burns. But the fire is not the enemy, it is the alchemist. He tapped his chest with a weathered hand. Inside you, fire burns. It burns away the false to reveal the truth. To suffer without transformation is to be burned without light. He bowed his head. May you learn to welcome pain as a teacher, not as a tyrant. The keeper of silence nodded slowly. The fourth voice has spoken. The fire crackled louder, and for a moment the night felt less cold. The circle breathed together, warmed by the truth that suffering is not absence of love, but its forging. Chapter 8. The Scientist of Light, the Quantum Mind. The fire's glow flickered softly as the fire speaker took his seat, the warmth lingering like a promise. The circle shifted subtly, minds ready for a new kind of truth, one that bridged science and spirit. The scientist of light stood. He was a man of middle age, his eyes bright behind thin glasses, hair peppered with silver. A calm intensity radiated from him, like the hum of a finely tuned instrument. He spoke carefully, as if choosing his words with precision of a physicist, but the reverence of a mystic. The universe is not a clockwork machine, he said softly. It is a dance, a relationship. He paused, looking at each face. And the dancer is you. The child monk tilted his head. How can I be the dancer if I am but a small child in this great circle? The scientist smiled. Because the cosmos is not outside you, it is within. He pulled from his satchel a small crystal prism. Its light splits into colors only when observed. Before perception, it is whole. He held the prism up to the firelight. Colors danced across the faces gathered around the circle. Similarly, reality itself depends on the observer, not only physically, but spiritually. He let the prism fall gently into his palm. The observer and the observed are one. The fire speaker frowned slightly. Are you saying reality is only what we see? What if we're mistaken? The scientist nodded. Exactly. Which is why true knowledge cannot be only external. It arises when you realize that your consciousness shapes the universe as much as the universe shapes you. The forest seer leaned forward. So the earth we see, the pain we feel, they are part of this dance? Yes, the scientist said. All is entangled. He stretched out his hands. Imagine the universe as a vast web. each thread connected to every other. When you touch one part, the whole responds. He looked around the circle, voice softer now. Your thoughts, your presence, they ripple through the cosmos. We are not in the universe is in us. The keeper of silence nodded slowly. The fifth voice has spoken. The circle was quiet but electric, a charged silence full of possibility. The windwalker's flute began to hum softly again, as if to carry the scientist's light through the night air. Chapter 9. The Ocean Priestess, the Keeper of Tides. The circle remained hushed after the scientist of light's profound words. The fire flickered gently, as if breathing in the quiet wonder of unity. Then, from the shadows by the edge of the circle, a soft voice rose. The ocean priestess stepped forward. Her hair was long and silver, flowing like waves in a gentle breeze. Her skin was weathered but radiant, carrying the salt and wisdom of countless tides. Around her neck hung shells, coral, and a pendant carved from whale bone. She carried no book, no tool, only the sound of the sea itself, held deep within her. She settled by the fire, gazing into the dancing flames as if reading the ocean waves. The truth moves like water, she said softly, ever flowing, ever changing. She turned her gaze toward the group. We try to hold it like stone, rigid and fixed, but truth is rhythm. The fire speaker nodded. Like the fire's dance, she smiled warmly. Yes, and like the tide's song. She reached into a woven basket beside her and lifted a small conch shell. The ocean teaches surrender. To surrender is not to give up, but to listen to the deeper tides beneath the waves. She held the shell to her lips and blew a long, haunting note. The sound seemed to ripple through the night, echoing in the hearts of the gathered. The child monk looked up, eyes wide. What did the tides say? The ocean priestess smiled gently. They say that life is not control, but flow. She traced circles in the sand with her fingers. When you stop grasping, the tide carries you home. We humans often resist the rhythms of life, she continued. We fight the currents, forgetting that the sea's power is in its surrender. The ocean moves with storms and calm. It accepts both without resistance. She looked at each of the circle. So must we learn to move with life's tides, accepting pain, joy, loss, and love? Harmony is not a still pond. It is the dance of waves, rising and falling. The keeper of silence nodded. The sixth voice has spoken. The fire crackled in agreement, and far beyond the clearing, the distant sound of waves whispered on the wind. Chapter 10. The Griot of the Flame, the Memory Keeper. The ocean's distant whisper faded as the fire flickered softly, now a gentle guardian of the night's growing wisdom. The circle shifted again, anticipation weaving through the cool air. From the shadows emerged a tall figure with skin like burnished mahogany, dressed in vibrant cloth patterned with symbols ancient and sacred. In his hands he carried a drum, worn smooth by countless hands and ages. He was the Griot of the Flame, the keeper of stories, the living bridge between past and present. As he settled near the fire, his deep voice began to rise, rhythmic and rich, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Long ago, he began, before words were written, before memory was captured in stone, we told stories. He struck the drum, a slow, steady pulse. Stories are not just tales to entertain. They are vessels of truth, carriers of the soul's memory. The keeper of silence leaned in. Tell us, Griot, how do stories keep truth alive? The Griot smiled, fingers caressing the drumhead. We do not tell stories to remember. We tell stories so the truth remembers us. He began a chant, his voice rising and falling like waves. My grandmother's voice once told me, truth is not a thing to hold, but a river to follow. It flows in blood, in song, in the dance of flames. He nodded to the fire speaker. Like fire, stories transform. They burn away forgetfulness. He looked to the ocean priestess. Like the tide, stories carried the weight of generations. He smiled, and like the wind, they carried the whispers of ancestors long gone. The scientist spoke softly. So our memories and stories shape who we are? The griot nodded. More than that, they shape who we will become. He pounded the drum once, sharply. When a story is told, the past lives again. When a song is sung, the future listens. He looked at each voice in the circle. And now, here, our stories converge. 12 voices, one truth, carried through time by the flame we tend. He smiled broadly. May our stories never die. The keeper of silence rose and bowed deeply. The seventh voice has spoken. The fire leapt suddenly, as if fueled by the griot's song. The circle sat in reverent silence, feeling the pulse of memory flowing through them all. Chapter 11. The Mirror Holder, the Unnamed One. The fire's flame crackled softly, their light flickering against the faces worn by travel and wisdom. One by one, voices had risen and fallen in the circle. Now, a new presence emerged. The mirror holder stepped forward, an androgynous figure cloaked in a simple gray robe, face partially shadowed. For a long time, they remained silent, eyes sweeping across the group, absorbing the stories, the truths spoken. No one knew their name. They spoke only when ready. The circle waited. After a long pause, the mirror holder spoke. I have listened to the windwalker's longing for love, to the forest seer's cry for earth, to the child of stillness, quiet presence, to the fire speaker's call to transformation, to the scientist's vision of oneness, to the ocean priestess' rhythm of surrender, to the griot's memory of our ancestors. They paused. Each voice alone is incomplete. They raised a hand, palms open as if holding something invisible. Truth is not a single note, but a symphony. No one voice can capture the whole. You, who listen, are the mirror that holds us all. The windwalker nodded slowly. I see it now. The path is not one, but many paths intertwine. The mirror holder smiled faintly. You are me. I am you. Each truth is a reflection of another. Without the earth, love is hollow. Without stillness, transformation is chaos. Without memory, rhythm is forgetfulness. They lowered their hands. The truth is not in any of us alone. It lives between us. The child monk finally smiled, a rare gesture, and said softly, the silence between words is where meaning lives. The scientist nodded, and the observer cannot be separated from what is observed. The mirror holder's eyes shone with quiet light. We are not 12 truths. We are one truth, seen through 12 eyes. And this truth, they paused, then said, in relationship, connection, reflection. The keeper of silence bowed deeply. The 11th voice has spoken. The fire burned steady, and the circle seemed to breathe as one, united, whole, yet beautifully diverse. Chapter 12. The 12th seat, the empty chair. The night deepened around the circle, stars bright above like distant witnesses. The fire crackled, casting long shadows on the faces of those who had spoken, each marked by the weight and gift of their truth. One chair remained empty. 11 voices had spoken, but the 12th seat was still vacant. A silence settled over the circle that was unlike any before, heavier, deeper, pregnant with meaning. The windwalker glanced toward the empty chair. then looked back at the others. Who should sit there? The ocean priestess shook her head softly. Perhaps no one. The keeper of silence finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. The circle is complete. The griot leaned forward, eyes thoughtful. In my village, we leave a place for the ancestors who are not here, but whose presence shapes every story. The fire speaker nodded. In the desert, we leave a space for the fire that burns without being seen. The scientist looked closely at the empty chair. It is a reminder that not all truth can be grasped or spoken. The mirror holder's gaze was steady. The 12th voice is not missing. It is the silence that holds all voices. The keeper of silence raised a hand. What cannot be said is the final teaching. She bowed her head. The empty chair is full of the unspeakable truth we carry but cannot name. The child monk, silent until now, finally spoke. Before name, there is truth. The circle bowed their heads in reverence. The wind whispered softly through the ancient sanctuary as if the silence itself was breathing. And in that sacred stillness, the 12 and the one that's not there were one. Final quote. The one who did not speak said everything. The seat was not empty. It was full of the silence we forgot to hear.